There's people that are students, new Canadians, there's an Indigenous population.
Tonight, dismantling 8 Edmonton encampments.
When I see it, I hear his voice, I see his demeanor.
Honoring a former chief of the Piikani Nation. And who made the list? The latest appointments to the Order of Canada. Good evening and welcome to APTN National News. I'm Savannah Kelly. Edmonton police are continuing to close down 8 encampments across the city. Today, the 3rd and 4th were dismantled. APTN's Chris Stewart was at one of the locations.
Last month, a King's Bench justice at Edmonton granted an interim order to allow city police to dismantle 8 encampments in the city that were deemed high risk for fires and potential criminal issues. Justice Kent Davidson also ruled that there must be enough room in shelters for displaced people and that they be given notice before evictions begin. If there is no room in shelters, only those that are deemed a risk to public health and safety can be closed. Police sweeps and evictions began during the last week of December. They closed 2 camps, and today 2 more camps near downtown were cleared by Edmonton police. Jordan Morgan is a volunteer with Water Warriors.
So with the unhoused community, a lot of people feel it's predominantly addicts or people that are living unsavory lifestyles, and that's not the case here. There's people that are students, new Canadians, there's an Indigenous population, there's just a lot of people who have had issues past the COVID pandemic.
Rochelle Gladue is a co-founder of Tawa Outreach Collective, an Indigenous-led street outreach group. She has concerns about the quickness of the evictions.
When they made the announcement on the 15th, they specifically stated no social services, no witnesses on site. They made a plan for up to 150 decampments. And, you know, the last time they had such a large scale mass sweep was last May, which I believe was about 118 decampments within a whole month. So the fact that they wanted to plan 150 in a week with no witnesses was, you know, the most concerning part.
She hopes there are enough shelter beds for everyone displaced.
They planned these encampment sweeps. They've given days notice for even this one. They gave a few days notice. So how do they know a couple days ago that there's enough shelter space today, right? Like it can change in an instant.
There was 2 individuals I spoke to, and obviously they're depressed, they're sad. They're trying to consolidate all of their life into a very small amount of space.
Floyd Lubican says he sleeps in a shelter and has been in encampments many times. He told APTN that hotels need to be built so that everyone has a warm place to sleep.
A cheap hotel, because the hotels, they're expensive. An arm and a leg, man, oh. And when you're homeless and you're poor, they should at least have a place. Like they got shelters, but you have to be in a certain time, and they get filled. They fill up right away.
More evictions are expected tomorrow and in the upcoming days. Edmonton Police Services declined to speak to APTN, saying that the situation is fluid and they will provide updates in the future. Justice Davidson will hear an injunction on January 11th to stop future encampment evictions. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
We want to hear what you think about the camp evictions happening in Edmonton or any other stories you see here tonight. Here's how to continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to aptnnews.ca. You can find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X, previously known as Twitter. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Manitoba had a busy year filled with many firsts, as well as some conflicts. Sav Jonza takes us on a trip back through 2023 to see what all happened.
Come with me, Sav Jonza, as we take a look back at some stories from Manitoba in 2023. Starting in the winter, a new transitional housing project welcomed almost 24 unhoused individuals to their community of tiny homes in Winnipeg. It's the first of its kind in Manitoba. Astam Api Nikanak is Indigenous-led and focuses on healing in a culturally significant way.
Because I believe that their spirituality and culture is a big thing in them moving ahead and doing better in their life.
According to End Homelessness Winnipeg's 2022 Street Census report, Indigenous people accounted for almost 70% of Winnipeg's houseless population. With no time limit on a person's stay, residents can heal from trauma at their own pace.
Like one of the fellows bathed in the river every day, and then when it froze, he was unable to bathe. So when he moved in here, he had a shower, he had a warm bed and a warm home to sleep in, and he didn't sleep the whole night because he was on the streets for 5+ years, but he felt safe.
In the summer, tensions grew between protesters calling for a landfill search for the bodies of Indigenous women and the Winnipeg Police Service and the former provincial government, who refused to do it, citing health hazards.
We're not asking, we are telling you that this needs to be done. You will search the landfill, and if you will not, you will hand me the shovel and you will hand me the hazmat suits myself, and our community will go in there and retrieve our woman.
Indigenous leadership from around the country showed their support for the grieving families.
If we're an Indigenous person and we're in these positions, this is what we have to do. We have to break rules. We have to push boundaries. And so we're here today to come show our love and support for the families who have set up here so diligently and have to mourn so publicly.
Winnipeg Police Headquarters were defaced by some protesters calling for the WPS to do something. A few days later, the city hosted the World Police and Fire Games, bringing thousands of first responders from around the world to compete in sport competitions. More protesters took to the streets, chanting for them to go home and for WPS to search the landfill.
Search the landfill! Cancel
In the fall, history was made through the election of the first provincial premier of First Nations descent, Wab Kinew.
My dad wasn't allowed to vote when he was a young man. Tonight, his son was elected to lead the province.
On election night, he reaffirmed his government's support for searching the landfill.
It is an issue that needs to be pursued very quickly because there's families who are grieving and the administration of justice needs to move along promptly.
Kinew made further history at his swearing-in ceremony when he announced his cabinet. Nahani Fontaine and Bernadette Smith were appointed as the first First Nations women ministers in Manitoba. And Uzoma Asagwara, who is non-binary, was sworn in as the first Black queer minister and deputy premier for Manitoba.
And I believe that this sends a message to every young person in Manitoba that no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, and no matter which barriers you have to overcome on your life's path, that the road to success is open for you.
Wow, what a busy year we had. Thank you so much for taking this trip through 2023 with me. I wish you all happy holidays and look forward to bringing you more stories in 2024. Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
We need to step aside for a short break, but first, here's a preview of a story we'll have for you this week.
I'm Tamara Pimentel, a former RCMP officer who launched a class action lawsuit to end systemic racism in the force, makes a career change.
They didn't care if I was dead or alive, the RCMP.
How she went from being a poster child as the first First Nations female officer in Manitoba to playing a key role in a landfill search for 3 Indigenous women.
The search will happen, and we will find them. There is no other way.
I'll have Marge Hudson's story soon on APTN National News.
Welcome back to APTN National News. It was a busy year across the Northwest Territories, from unprecedented climate disasters to a newly elected government. Our reporter Charlotte Mort-Jacobs looks back on 2023.
Athletes from across the Northwest Territories kicked off the year showcasing their skills down south at the 2023 Wood Buffalo Arctic Winter Games.
I'm so proud of where I come from, so that's the biggest deal for me. It's just the fact that I'm able to carry this flag, and for this whole territory is the biggest honor.
At the North Slave Correctional Center in Yellowknife, a new land-based education program proved to be a big hit. Inmates completed in-class and hands-on learning aimed to provide them with an opportunity for income upon release.
It keeps me calm, I actually makes me feel like I'm worthy again.
Okay, this right here too, this just started last year, this one.
The state of housing made headlines as community members went to media and voiced frustration.
And you can see the ice, so it drains into here. It's got to be done within 10 days, but they tell me since September, okay, we don't have the windows, we have to order them, and because of COVID, and that was the last excuse, but I got in touch with them.
But there was some hope with the new Tenants Association helping renters navigate the legal system.
Should the government of the Northwest Territories be the housing provider, or should they be the regulator of housing? They should be going after the corporate landlords.
This winter, APTN drove the ice road north of Yellowknife to spend time with Cleacho Dene harvesting monitors and see the Bathurst Barren Ground caribou.
The older men would talk about the younger guys hunting. That's so different compared to when they used to go hunting.
And tragedy struck on May 6th when Gwich'in and Inuvialuit man Frank Rubin went missing from Fort Smith.
He was such an outgoing and kind person, especially, I guess, around us students.
Arguably the biggest news story of the year, wildfires. They burned earlier, they burned hotter, and they burned longer than ever before. Communities such as Hay River were evacuated more than once, and the hamlet of Enterprise burned to the ground. Climate disasters prompted conversation around the needs for Indigenous knowledge in fire management and mental health from the land.
Well, growing up, my dad was a firefighter, and so I've heard a lot of stories about how, there's been fires throughout history, but they've never been allowed to get as big as these fires have been.
In August, when Yellowknife was evacuated, many were left in desperation for financial assistance from the territorial government.
It's difficult because, everybody, like all our friends and family, are all split up all over the place.
With roughly 70% of the NWT population displaced by the fires, there was also a call for an independent public inquiry into how the NWT responded.
Sharing their experiences, looking at the lessons that may come out of it.
In the fall, APTN visited Thabatcha Fort Smith, where Métis groups were still waiting on an apology and compensation for loss of their traditional hunting rights in Wood Buffalo National Park.
Large chunks of our own land, including Wood Buffalo Park, we couldn't hunt. And we can't hunt in Alberta, Saskatchewan.
On September 30th, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, residential school survivors renewed calls for demolition of the former residential schools in Fort Smith.
I'm still grieving from it, and I think once those buildings are torn down and we can see new buildings, then maybe new life will come into Fort Smith.
And while the NWT is still no closer to having a residential treatment center, APTN continued to cover the work being done by Indigenous organizations running land-based healing and wellness programs.
In the Western world, medicine world, we can conceptualize everything, but you kind of keep your feelings and your spirit kind of is not acknowledged, or it's not part of the system that you supposedly bring to your job. But in this, it's your spirit and your energy.
Rounding out the year, the race was on for the territory's political hopefuls.
But a lot of the issues that we're going to be talking about tonight and that the candidates have been talking about disproportionately impact Indigenous peoples.
In November, 19 members of the Legislative Assembly were sworn in. It was a vote for change. Fewer incumbents than expected were re-elected. But one longtime politician who was and would go on to become the Premier, R.J. Simpson, Métis from Hay River.
Still in a bit of shock, but I'm excited. I think we have a really good crew, and we made a lot of progress in the last government and working with Indigenous governments, and I think that really is the future of the territory, building those relationships so that we can really build up the territory.
Simpson's election was the first time since 2011 that the top job in the territory's government was taken by somebody from a remote community. Charlotte Moritz-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
A painting celebrating a Piikani icon has reached its final owner. A work honors the life of former Chief Nelson Smalllegs, who played a pivotal role in the area's history. CTV's Tim Brooke has more on the way he's being honored.
She painted it decades ago, but Jeanette McClellan-Brooks says only now has Man of Vision reached its proper home.
It's more than I could have ever wished for in my life.
McClellan-Brooks, who is a close supporter of the Piikani Nation, made this watercolor years ago. It honors a former friend and nation icon.
This is a long journey for me because I knew this family so well.
The late Chief Nelson Smalllegs is depicted here, proudly overlooking the land he led in the 1970s. He was seen as a pioneer who spread a message of Indigenous injustice and the need for activism. Now donated, his image will live on inside the nation's council chambers.
It's great and being able to remember him today and the various memories we've all had.
Members of the council were in Calgary Friday to accept the painting and various other items tied to Piikani history. The nation's current chief says he's honored.
So when I see it, I hear his voice, I see his demeanor. He carried with him this aura of authority, but also of caring.
Man of Vision will be placed in the chambers in the days ahead. Tim Brooke, CTV News, Calgary.
We need to take one more quick break. Coming up, we'll tell you about 7 Indigenous people being appointed to the Order of Canada. Stick around. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. The setting sun, where the sky meets Sucker Point near Sturgeon Landing, Saskatchewan, is where Cora Sinclair took this amazing photo. Thanks for starting us off in 2024, Cora. We look forward to all the amazing photos our viewers submit by sending those photos to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting off on the east coast, 1 degree in St. John's, -1 in Charlottetown. Nain, -17 and sunny. Kuujjuaq, snowy and -18. Val-d'Or, snowy, -7. Gaspé, -1. Ottawa, snowy and 1 degree. Sault Ste. Marie, 0 degrees and flurries. Wawa, snowy and -9. Big Trout Lake, -15. Churchill, snowy and -16. The Pas, sunny, -12. Winnipeg, -9 and sunshine there. Barons River, -11. Regina, -7, mix of sun and cloud. North Battleford, snowy and -6. Stony Rapids, snowy and -18. Buffalo Narrows, -11. Snowy in northern Alberta, -14 in Fort McMurray, -9 in Peace River. Calgary, -4. Edmonton, -6. Campbell River, -7, or +7 I should say. Kamloops, +3. Fort Nelson, snowy and -18. Smithers, -1. Watson Lake, snowy and -13. Dawson, -30. Norman Wells, -19. Wati, sunshine, -29. Paulituck, sunshine, -25 there. Colville Lake, -30. Baker Lake, -28 there. Cambridge Bay, -28 as well. Iqaluit, snowy and -16. And Clyde River, -15 in flurries. Lacrosse is set to make an Olympic comeback in LA in 2028. But the people credited with creating the sport are now fighting for a chance to compete at the Olympics under their Indigenous flag. CTV's Jesse Thomas has the story.
The best sharpshooters in all of lacrosse.
Snipe City there for starts.
And is one of several Indigenous players on the Halifax Thunderbirds. The 31-year-old is thrilled about lacrosse's comeback to the Olympic Games in 2028, but he hopes he and his Indigenous teammates have a chance to play there.
We played in the World Games, with all the other countries under our own flag and own national anthem. For us, it's just about being included in the sport and, being recognized as our own.
Stotts and several of his Thunderbirds teammates like Captain Cody Jamieson and goalie Warren Hill have competed internationally as the Haudenosaunee Nationals, an Indigenous team comprised from 6 nations that make up the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, who are not recognized by the International Olympic Committee.
For us to hopefully get recognized, it's going to take, I think a lot.
The Nationals have been in this position before. They were denied travel to England for the 2010 World Championships. Their Haudenosaunee passports were not recognized by the British government.
We've always had hoops and stuff to jump through and over and back through and over again. So
earlier this month, U.S. President Joe Biden endorsed the Nationals, recognizing their invention of the game and advocated for their place at the Olympics.
Their circumstances are unique, and they should be granted an exception to field their own team at the Olympics.
Lacrosse commentator Pat Gregoire says the team deserves a spot.
Even though the game has been accepted, it feels like we're still that one step away, and that one step away to make this a full circle moment is having the Haudenosaunees being able to represent their country on their passports with their flag on the biggest stage.
And for the players, it's not just about playing the game. As a nation, they are among the top 3 contenders. It's also a matter of recognition. Jesse Thomas, CTV News, Halifax.
7 Indigenous artists, musicians, activists, and politicians will receive appointments to the Order of Canada. Willie Littlechild, Stephen Point, and Richard Wayne Hill are among the list of names announced last week by Governor General Mary Simon. Willie Littlechild is probably the most recognized name on the list of 78 new appointees. He was commissioner of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for 6 years. Innu poet Josephine Bacon is being recognized for her contributions to Indigenous literature and culture. Another appointee is Elder Albert Marshall for his dedication to promoting Mi'kmaq culture. And Inuk opera singer Diantha Edmonds for her mentorship of young Indigenous musicians. Simon also appointed former British Columbia Lieutenant Governor Stephen Point and first Inuit Senator Willie Adams. As well, Richard Wayne Hill Sr. was made an honorary appointee for preserving Haudenosaunee culture. The ceremony will be held at a later date at Rideau Hall. And that's all the time we have for you tonight on APTN National News. For news anytime, head on over to our website at aptnnews.ca. I'm Savannah Kelly. Marcy Miigwech, thank you for joining us tonight. Happy New Year, take care, and have a great night.